Good afternoon and welcome to today's Industry Week webcast, Tools to Navigate the Changing Workforce in Manufacturing, sponsored by Dude Solutions. My name is Jill Jusko. I'm Associate Content Director for Industry Week. And before we begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you are having any audio difficulties or slides are not advancing, simply hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the Help button to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the Maximize icon or by dragging the lower right corner to enlarge the window. And we welcome your questions during today's event. To submit your questions to today's presenters, simply type your question into the Q&A window on the left side of your screen and then hit the Submit button. We will be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation. But please feel free to send in your questions at any time and we will add them to the queue. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Industry Week website within the next week for you to review, and you will be notified by email when that archive is available. On your console, the Dude Solutions logos are hot linked. If you want to visit their website during this webcast, you can click on a logo and a new window will open, and this will not take you out of the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have joining us today Wayne Glass, who is a manufacturing M&O manager. Wayne built two maintenance management careers in two very different fields. A closer look reveals both fields, military maintenance and industrial mining, deal with skilled resource shortages in similar ways. Wayne says, quote, "Organization of the maintenance effort is what CMMS is all about." He should know his broad career includes 25 years in the U.S. Army, followed by 14 years in mine maintenance management. Wayne credits CMMS as key to his effective maintenance efforts in both the 1991 Persian Gulf War and 2003 invasion of Iraq. He also says it is paramount to lead an effective plant maintenance program. Wayne's many military awards include the Bronze Star Service Medal, and Wayne has just finished a from scratch CMS implementation in California and is moving to the Austin, Texas area. Joining Wayne today is Paul LaChance. Paul is the Senior Manufacturing Advisor for Dude Solutions. Paul LaChance has spent his entire career devoted to optimizing maintenance teams by enabling data-driven decisions and actionable insights. He wrote his first CMMS system in 2004 and has spent his professional career designing and directing CMMS and EAM systems. A regular speaker at national trade shows, Paul has been featured at IMTS, FabTech, and SMRP, as well as several industry magazines. He currently serves as the Senior Manufacturing Advisor for Dude Solutions. With that, Wayne and Paul, the floor is yours.
Howdy.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Today's topic, tools to navigate the changing workforce. So our key topics we're going to discuss today are the state of today's workforce, labor market, skill sets, technologies, and teams. There are all kinds of changes in today's workforce. The labor market is in flux, and we look to need to grow your team skills, especially given the skills gaps. Technology can help with this and can also help bridge and unite the many generations of your workforce. So we'll talk about how you can use technology to elevate your role. And of course, we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end. So what is the state of today's workforce? Some statistics for you. There are 7.6 million unfulfilled jobs, but there's only 6.5 million people looking to fill those jobs. We have a 1 million person gap. There's a lot of competition for those jobs. Even more interesting, is 50% of facilities personnel, maintenance operation facilities personnel, are set to retire in the next 10 years. Picture half of your team looking to retire in the next 10 years. We are absolutely an aging population. 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older by the year 2030. So some of these changing workforce, aging workforce issues may be keeping you up at night. And the questions that you're probably thinking about are, how are you going to replace those soon-to-be retiring employees? How are you going to handle the competition for skilled labor? There's a lot of people, there's a lot of unfulfilled positions, and there's not enough people to fill them. How are you going to do that? How are you going to find those next well-qualified technicians? What do you need personally, the skills to grow your career and to do your best work? And how will you enable your team to learn new technologies? As we go through this presentation today, I'm going to refer to Susan and Chuck. I want you to meet them. Every organization has a Susan and has a Chuck. You may have lots of them. You may be that person on this webinar today. Susan knows every in and out of the organization. She knows all the maintenance personnel. She knows everybody in production. She knows where to go at any given time. She has an amazing amount of knowledge in her head. Chuck's that guy who's been working at that facility for 25, 30, 40 years. He could change that filter blindfolded in a hurricane if he had to. He has an amazing amount of knowledge in his head. And these are the types of people that have been helping your organization move forward and grow. But they're set to retire. And there's also changes in technology that are going to affect that. So how can we capture what Susan and Chuck know, and how can we use that to benefit our organization as we go forward? There is a lot of change coming. Technology changes, the people setting to retire, but it is affecting everybody. It is affecting your suppliers. It is affecting your vendors. It's affecting your competition. Everybody is in the same boat. And we need to not look at this changing workforce with dread, but we need to work with that changing workforce and look at the opportunities that it's going to give us. So let's talk about the state of the current labor market, which is definitely in flux. 10 million is the number of shortfall of workers in the next 10 years. That gap of the number of qualified workers is only starting to grow. Reiterating the statistic about the aging workforce that is set to retire. The average number of days to fill a position is 93. That number used to be in the 70s not very long ago. It's taking longer and longer to find those qualified people to fill your role. So there's challenges here. Brain drain is one of the #1 concerns. It's the Chucks and the Susans that will no longer be with your organization. That historical knowledge is lost when your employees exit the team. And we need to capture that information, but that is an absolute challenge that should be front and center. Investment in trade jobs has dropped. Back when I was in high school, there were shop classes, and people did focus on careers involving maintenance operations and more technical jobs like that, which, you know, liberal arts and sciences types educations have become in favor for the last several decades. And as a country, we don't have as many people with those skills. Fortunately, it's starting to change, but there's a big gap that has to fill. What's also happening is you're starting to see more and more contract work is needed to fill these vital roles in organizations that can't find the full-time hired employees to do it. And that has ramifications on your budgets. So how can we help with these challenges? Well, it starts with tools that are going to help us do more with less. We use the word lean in manufacturing all the time, and this is no different. We need to figure out how we can optimize, we can be more efficient. We have to enable our teams with the tools they need to excel in this current market. And there's all kinds of ways we can make this happen. Technology can be a big part of this. Well, it starts off by, I think, the #1 thing that you need to do is to document your work. So documenting your work is to move from this concept where we just describe a process to a new hire and then they learn it and then they just kind of move on. That's not going to work moving forward. We've got to figure out a way, organizations must figure out a way where they document all of their standard activities. Work orders management is absolute must. Your preventive maintenance routines and your common corrective maintenance routines. Orienting yourself to the equipment, knowing where the equipment is, knowing the workings of the equipment, having all the documentation in a readily accessible place. Safety documentation the same way. And really any daily operational tasks, inspections, job safety assessment, lockout, tagout procedures, anything that you're routinely following as part of your maintenance needs to be documented in your CMMS. Wayne, I bet you have a comment or two of how you've used that effectively in the past.
You know, Paul, I do. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is add another challenge that you didn't mention there. You kind of touched on it. But, you know, today when we invest in new assets, and man, those are capital purchases that are, you know, end up being major projects. At the end of the whole thing, what you get is pretty much what you get, oftentimes what you get when you buy software, and that's no documentation or very little or very generic documentation that doesn't apply to your process or to oftentimes to that actual particular asset. So you need to find a way to marry the brain dump that you get from the Susans and I think you said Chuck. But you also want to get that information, and the parts information and the service and PM information has to be oftentimes developed from scratch and married up with the knowledge from folks like that and kept someplace. You need a central warehouse, if you will, for documentation, a central place where all of that, where the assets and all of that is married.
Awesome. Thank you. Track and analyze. You really need to know what work is being completed, and probably more importantly, what's not getting completed. A CMMS system is going to help you track that. It's the place you can go to look up all of your work orders, what's open, what's closed historically. You know the people that are available to work on those work orders. You know their skill sets. You know their certifications. You can help manage that process. You can also use that information and analyze historically all those work orders and all the work that's ongoing to know when you might need to forecast additional people you might need to keep up with your organization's growth, what skills you need to look for, where you might be able to contract or not contract. But having a combination of keeping track operationally day to day and using the history to help analyze the future can be very helpful. Wayne, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's invaluable because the CMS also gives you all the caveats and key points that maybe happen during that specific job. That's just dynamite, golden nuggets to carry in the future. You know, 8 years from now, when the same people ain't here anymore, and you got to do that really big job again. Yeah, that's where you really make your money in a CMMS. One of the ways, anyhow.
Great. Thanks, Wayne. You got to train your team. It doesn't matter how the age or the background of the team, they're going to need training. So, for example, technology is a good example. And we're not talking about, say, the software side. We're talking about the changing assets that are becoming more and more powerful and intelligent, more and more technical. The tools that you use as a maintenance operation person are changing. You also need to have training on just straightforward routines that you're going to do, your preventive maintenance, your corrective maintenance, as these people are set to retire. You have a whole new group of people that are going to be trained on that. You need to understand how your facilities and your assets are laid out, daily processes, inspections, total productive maintenance. And you're also going to need, I think this is an often underlooked area, is soft skills like communication. How are we going to communicate properly as our organizations and workforce change? As far as training goes, do you have any comments on that, Wayne?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to add a positive note. You know, you talked about some of the challenges that you get with the younger workforce, and you know, trades really fell away from where the typical American career focus was for a lot of years. And as you mentioned before, it kind of touched on that. We're feeling that pain now. But, you know, a lot of these younger folks, when you want to train them, where they may need to learn the nuts and bolts of the process or their job, when it comes to embracing technology, They're really very tradable, and when we're learning something new, we look for something we recognize, and if we can grab a hold of that, that helps us in. And so I would just increase everybody, these youngsters maybe that need to learn the dirty hands into the job. If they understand the technology end, as we struggle, us older folks in the career path struggle to learn all the things that automation can do for us and all the things that we can do. We can maximize the training benefit to these new folks by using technology and putting it in their hands along with the wrench. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And we're going to expand on that. I think it's great. So the next section we're going to talk about is the state of skill sets.
Perfect.
80% of organizations agree there's a skills gap. That skills gap of these changing technologies and people not necessarily coming out of their educational place and having that. 108 million, that's the number of workers that hold jobs that require moderate or high digital knowledge, so technical digital knowledge. 40% say that skills requirements will have the biggest impact on their job over the next 5 years. There's a lot of impacts that happen in organizations. You have global economy, you have local economy, you have all kinds of different things. The changing workforce and the skills gaps and requirements is on the mind of a lot of organizations, as it should be. So how can we address this? So there are some steps. There are tools you can use to grow your skills. I read Deloitte studies a lot. They're a very reputable consulting firm, and there's a lot of information they have, but they've broken it down as far as the changing workforce into 3 buckets: technical skills, digital skills, and soft skills. So we're going to break that up, starting with the technical skills. So basically, the way these assets, the way these tools, the way these facilities are set up, there is so much more intelligence, there is so much more power, and that's not going to change. It's only happening at a more rapid, increasing basis. You've got to figure out how to train up, to get your organization to understand that. Back in the day, when we looked at our equipment and our assets, you had a lot of analog gauges, you had a lot of very mechanical, a lot less electronic or digital type technology inside these assets and that tools. Fast forward today, and what you're using, the equipment, the assets have evolved quite a bit. So, and we don't want to try to make this sound alarming or scary. These tools, although they may be more powerful, they're also not as hard to use. We're really, as technology companies are trying to create these things, we're trying to make them as easy to use as possible, but they are a lot more powerful. And you have to accept that your team is going to have to shorten that gap to understand and use these types of equipment. Digital skills. The digital skills, we're crossing over into more the computer, the software world. You've got to embrace the fact that technology and software is going to give you the ability to be more efficient, to do more with less. Your team's going to have to embrace the fact that software and things like a mobile device, a smartphone, a tablet should be treated the same way you're going to treat a screwdriver or a multimeter. I mean, these are just tools that can make our jobs be more efficient. Fortunately, you have organizations like Dude Solutions that can help you train your team and you how to use these technologies. Back in the day, when organizations just use paper-based systems and a spreadsheet or a whiteboard or just a little bit better than paper-based systems, in those days, you could maybe get your maintenance somewhat organized, but it's nowhere near going to compare to the power that you can have when you log into your CMMS system and you know exactly the work orders that you are going to work on, that your team's going to work on. Are you in line with your metrics and goals, whether it's on your mobile device or directly in the software on your browser? So you have that ability to have that right at your fingertips. So you've got to embrace not only for you as a manager, if you're a manager on this call, but also your team should embrace the fact that digital skills will need to be improved or increased, because that's going to allow you to do more with less and adjust to this changing workforce. Soft skills. Communication, collaboration, listening, and critical thinking. Communication, in my opinion, is at the heart of all of this. You have people of different ages that are working. You've got the Chucks, and you've got the kid who just graduated from a wonderful community college program, walking in and just starting their career. You've got to figure out how you can create an environment where people can communicate properly, so they can collaborate, so we can listen to each other, so you can listen to your team, so we can really have better critical thinking. You have to be able to develop those. Talk about the state of technology. So what do we know about today's technology? 95% of organizations agree a digital workplace is important. This stat cracks me up because I want to know what the other 5% are thinking. Everybody should think about a digital workplace. It is not important. It is essential. It is critical. 73% of organizations say that the vast majority of their applications will be SaaS, another way for saying cloud software, by 2020. I think that's also great because it gives the ability for you to see this information anywhere you are, whether it's on your mobile device, whether it's on your browser. 45% of organizations report improved customer satisfaction as a result of a digital workplace. You know, when we do a great job at maintenance operations, that ripples over into production and into finance and into sales and to, all the other aspects of your organization. Well, that will only ripple out to probably the most important area, and that's your customers' satisfaction. I think you'll see that number grow as we continue to embrace technology. Dude Solutions understands this whole technology world. We are a work and asset CMMS vendor. We're on our 20th anniversary. As you can see from the numbers on this screen, we've got a lot of experience, a lot of customers in a wide variety of industries, and really understand the nuances of how to properly deliver, to implement, and to train, and to coach you through how CMMS can kind of take you to that next level. We do that with our work and asset, our CMMS solution that has everything from purchasing, inventory, reporting and analysis, work orders, predictive, preventive, asset, integrating, and of course, mobile solutions. A team that uses a CMMS will see time savings and increased productivity. That's lean. That's doing more with less. That's knowing exactly the work orders, preventive and corrective, that you have to deal with. That's seeing them properly prioritized, not just by a straight priority, but also the criticality of the assets that are being worked on. This is how we make sure we have the right people and the parts and everything we need to do to make our maintenance be as efficient as possible. Organized workflows and improved internal processes. Things like the little nuances. For example, workflows. If I make a maintenance request, let's just say I'm a production supervisor and I make a maintenance request and I pick an asset, the CMMS is smart enough to know who is the typical team or person or contractor that typically works on that asset. Maybe this issue had a safety tag on it. We can automatically requisition the safety officer to be a part of that, to really streamline that process. Cloud-based software, the ability to let us work from anywhere. So whether I'm walking across my facility or my plant, I'm driving from one plant to another, I'm traveling to another region, or maybe I'm at a conference or even on vacation, nowhere near my facility, but I've got to check up on something. You have the ability to do that with cloud-based software, which is amazing. It helps you plan out your strategic capital planning, your cost savings. Know when you should repair or replace an asset. Know when you need to hire. Know when you might need more preventive maintenance on an asset. Or know how you can better control your parts and procurement process. Basically, all the detailed reporting and analytics can really give you data-driven business cases. It can arm you with what you need when you need to talk to your supervisor or to your management team. I've thrown a lot on this one here, Wayne, but I'm sure you've got some stories to tell about how CMMS can benefit.
Well, the other one that I just don't think you beat the drum enough on is by using CMMS and bringing organization to your maintenance, the big trick in getting really getting the most out of what you have is getting out in front of your maintenance. And that starts with a PM program. And so using the CMMS to routinely, whether it's based on operating hours for the asset or based on a calendar schedule, but to routinely service and look at that equipment, just like you do your family car, gives you the kind of reliability that we get out of family cars these days. And actually, if you look at that one, the track record through history, yeah, that's hands down. So it's all about preventative maintenance and organizing your assets to do that and get out in front, so you're not having a surprise $75,000 repair you didn't see coming, And so you deliver reliable equipment to the production folks so they can have reliable output.
Wonderful. Couldn't agree more. So what are some next steps to help you embrace technology? Every skill you develop, at one time you didn't have that skill. And I think the first step is to embrace that it might be new, it might be different. We may have never used, say, a mobile device in our facility as we walked around, but adapting to technology is no different. You got to start somewhere. I have stories of people back in the, say going back 10, 15 years when we first started introducing mobile technology to CMMS. And I can remember talking to maintenance supervisors, and they're like, there's no way I'm going to let my team have a mobile device when they walk around the floor. They're just going to treat it like, play games on it, go to look at websites. And what's happened over time is people have realized, that's more of a discipline issue. They treat these things like a tool. It is so much more efficient for them to have that in their pocket when they need to look something up and so on, and have it in their hands. So you just got to get them to embrace. So when you're using this technology, documenting your work, you take Chuck. Chuck knows everything about maintenance on the assets. And he can sit there and describe how to do these things. You've got to capture that information. You see a summary here on the left-hand side of a list of all of our preventive maintenance routines. On the upper right-hand corner, we've got a list of the step-by-step instructions. In the bottom of the screen, we can take it to the next level where you can see step 1 video link. You can actually, without much difficulty, record Chuck when he's performing some sort of a task and have that be a permanent part of that record, so that the next generation, that new person who's working there, those men and women, they can just pull it up on their mobile device or back in their desk and watch a little video on how Chuck has done this for the last 15 years. So documenting that work. Documenting your safety-related information, your job safety assessments, having access to your safety data sheets, links to vendors' websites that they have videos and so forth, to have all that information right there at your fingertips and on your desktop. To track and analyze the work you're doing. At the top left there, you can see how that's just a summary. When I log into the application, it shows me exactly the work I'm doing. It shows the work orders my team has, how many are overdue, parts I need to order. On the bottom left, we can see that's a list of all of my open work orders, properly prioritized with a calculated criticality, showing a combination of the criticality of the asset combined with the priority of the work order. Bottom right, we can see a monthly view of our future preventive maintenance. And of course, in the upper right, anything can be looked at with your mobile device. So have all that information at your fingertips. You need to highlight the benefits of this technology. When you see those previous screens and you're thinking, I would love to see that stuff and have it be at my fingertips. Having your team and see those benefits, see that value, see how it's going to help them, that early involvement is going to create buy-in. And that buy-in will create a win-win situation, because nothing's worse than forcing software on people unexpectedly that's going to make their lives better. It's the first they've heard of it. Find your champions, the people you talk to that you show this technology. They will help champion that, evangelize that technology throughout your organization, empower them, let them encourage and train other employees. I like what Wayne said, the dirty hand side of the job. Well, that's going to be more of Chuck's job to help do that. But you've got some of these younger generation that are very comfortable with mobile devices. And if done respectfully, they can help train their fellow teammates who might be a little bit more intimidated by those digital technologies and help shorten that skills gap.
And you know, just a quick caveat there, whenever Chuck's got to change the roles in the crusher, and he's done it for 20 years, and you know you're not going to have Chuck around long to do that, it pays to have one of them younger guys there, both learning off of Chuck, but also with some kind of audio visual device to you can actually record Chuck changing the roles and put it in the CMMS. It's a game changer.
Totally agree. Provide ongoing training. Ongoing support should be provided until everybody is up and running. I mean, training should come from outside sources. For example, Dude Solutions, we are responsible for training our employees, our customers, and they can go on to help train other people. But you got to just make sure that you always have support and training. Don't just throw technology at people and expect them to get it the first time. Be there when they struggle. Help them take that to the next level, ongoing. So what are the state of our teams? 25% of our workforce will be made up by Generation Z, Gen Z by 2022. That's the younger group. Those are the people just coming out of their high school, college, community college programs, certification programs, whatever it may be. And they're going to make up a quarter of our population. They also happen to be the same group that is most likely to participate in mentorships and apprenticeships. But interestingly, that's followed by the 50 plus. That later in their career generation of people, mentor programs, especially to help them get up to speed on the digital skills, the technology skills where mentoring would be appropriate. 86% of employees cite poor communication for workplace failure. That is a terrible statistic. That number must go down. If you're having a hard time filling the positions that you have open, and knowing that's only going to get harder, and knowing that the skills gap's going to only make the process more difficult to get them up to speed, we need to do everything we can to make our environment better for the people working in there. And that communication, improving those communication skills across the board can be a part of that. There's friction of multiple generations working together. And we have 5 generations of people, theoretically, in one organization. You got to wrap your head around that. But that shows we've got brand new kids right out of school to people who are probably long past retirement age, but just like working and don't want to stop. So there's different levels of career experience. There's different tenures with the company. There's different comfort levels of technology, and there's different communication styles. So you've got to figure out how can we make that better. Well, next steps. You've got to figure out working well cross-generationally. Key is we got to see how these generations can work more alike, that we are more alike than different. So focus on what aligns these generations. So you can see your drive to be successful. I think that's a common trait that we all have in our business, is either individual, as a team, or as a company. We want to be successful. Human connection, to be heard. We want to be able to better collaborate. Team morale will hinge on this. And we want to provide good service to our organizations. We need to keep this in mind when we are looking at improving our communication skills. What aligns the generations. We need to look for opportunities to learn. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, I was just going to say amen, both on the battlefield and in industrial maintenance. Everything you just listed there is exactly the same. That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct and with maintenance.
Thank you. Thank you. So we need to look for opportunities to learn. It doesn't matter how old you are. Everybody can be a student and everybody can be a teacher. So again, the dirty hand side of the job, as Wayne describes, where Chuck just absolutely shines, can be a teacher to the younger generation who's performing those tasks. We need everybody to learn from Chuck and document. Likewise, in the reverse, Chuck can learn from those younger generations who are better with the computer, better with the mobile device, better maybe with these more modern technology tools and assets. Use strengths of your team, take turns leading and learning. Retain your talent. How can we keep the team we have? Ergonomic adjustments. And in manufacturing, we have robotics that can help with that. Embrace this. I read a very interesting study where it was an auto manufacturer, and on one of their production lines, the average age was around 30. It was a young line. It was a bit physical what they had to do. And they tried to put an older generation line together where they put the average age more in the mid-40s. And what they learned in that process was they had to make adjustments, but the adjustments they made, for example, they changed angles of how you worked. Instead of having your arms over your head for a percentage of the work, they changed the angles of the assets and what they were working on lower, so they didn't have to raise their arms. Their feet got tired, so they empowered them with better quality shoes and set up pads where they had to stand a lot of the time where they worked to help them with that. And as a result, the older generation was able to have fewer defects, have just as good a production as the younger line, and they were satisfied with the work that was being done. So you can make changes in the environment to accommodate, in this case here, more of an aging workforce. Allow your workers to transfer to other positions. If Chuck can't climb ladders anymore, find a role for Chuck where he doesn't have to be on ladders. Adapt workers' needs for flexible hours, phased retirement. Encourage things like possibly part-time or through project contracting so that we can capture the power that these amazing older generation have to give us before they just leave because they can't do it anymore. It may not be because they don't want to do it, it's just because they can't. Make the changes and maybe they will consider. It's a lot easier to keep people than to hire new ones. Embrace mentorship. Be on the same team. Mentorship, apprenticeship, look for opportunities where you can learn from the Chucks and the Susans and vice versa. Really set that up as a formal process. Document it. Capture what you learn in that process because it's going to be so important in this changing workforce.
So, you know, Paul, when it comes to team formation, you know, it's really important to coach and mentor excellence, to admonish laziness, and to accept healthy mistakes. When folks are trying and learning, you know, sometimes mistakes are a good thing as long as it's not an unhealthy mistake.
Well said. Well said. Thanks, Wayne. So we're at the tail end here, the bottom line. There's many fields changing in operations. Management's no different. Choices you make today will influence not only your organization, but your industry. We are at a very interesting point in the evolution of manufacturing and operations related to that. Embrace it. Think about these choices because we are making a difference for the next generation. Future-proof your work. So not only can it withstand, but rise to this changing and aging workforce. You do not want to get caught 5 years from now, 7 years from now, looking at more than half of your team is going to be retiring, and you haven't thought about what you're going to do. Future-proof it by starting these thoughts today. And be a part of this change. This is positive stuff. Leave a legacy that you're proud of with your team. So we've got a poll question. So if you'd like some more information on the following: streamlining my workflow and managing assets through a CMMS, a private demonstration of our solutions, pricing, or maybe you just want to learn all of the above. If you could take a moment to fill out this poll, and then we'll make sure you get contacted. So this brings us to the Q&A portion.
Okay, thank you very much, Wayne and Paul, for the great presentation. We do have time for a few questions, so let us jump right in. And during the Q&A, please take a moment to complete the exit survey on the lower console. With that, our first question is this. Several members of my team are older and have been resistant to software in the past. I want the analysis, but how do I get my team to embrace new tools?
We talked a lot about that in the webinar. It all comes down to showing them the value and showing them the benefit. But I bet Wayne probably has some actual war stories. I use that phrase wrong, but some stories that he might be able to talk about. How do you get some of those old dogs to do these new tricks that we have to do these days?
So, you know, that actually is exactly what happens. The Chucks and the Susans or some of the Chucks and Susans, this Chuck and Susan generation oftentimes will resist the digital technology and change. You know, people resist change. I found what really just kind of, you know, in an implementation, actually what you're doing is you're taking the CMMS and you're configuring it to fit exactly to their business process. But, you know, you come on board and you see the folks grumble. But the first time that they conduct a PM and they actually put their input into the system and they say, hey, we need to change these in 3 weeks. And then lo and behold, in 3 weeks, when they see what they claimed needed to happen happening, then they realize that, hey, they're part of this whole effort. And they'll take ownership of it and they'll start to embrace that digital technology, because once they realize all this is doing is helping me communicate. You know, just like folks on the highway are constantly have an issue with texting and driving, and hey, that's not the place for technology, but they're over embracing. So in industry, you often find out the folks that resist the technology after they learn that, hey, this really can help me put my 2 cents into what the whole big machine here is doing. I won't say they over embrace it, but they actually will grab a hold of it. And for me as an implementation guy, when I hit that point and I've went from getting the resistance to getting that buy-in, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful thing for the organization as well. I know I got a soapbox with my answer, but yeah, that's really important.
Can't agree more.
Okay, our next question is, what are some best practices when it comes to getting and documenting historical knowledge from employees?
I'll go ahead and answer that first, but again, I'm sure Wayne would do it, have some good answers on that. But number one is, first off, you have to make sure you invest, you understand you're going to have to invest some time to capture that. It takes some effort, but it pays off wonderfully. So you find the Chucks, you find the Susans, and you have to capture their step-by-step instructions, and they have to end up in the CMMS system. So there's all kinds of ways to do that. I mean, you can just capture the physical notes and put them as steps in text. You can take still photos to document and annotate, and you can capture with video of what they're doing, so they become a part of that preventive maintenance routine directly in the CMMS system.
So, you know, I would tell you as a CMMS implementation guy, and that's kind of what I do here now, you know, the membership and the size of an implementation team, because it really is a joint effort. It's not one guy, you know, running on a squirrel cage, pecking on a computer. It's an organizational effort. And so the size of that team will grow and shrink depending on where you're at in the build and what you're doing. But what we're really talking about again here, folks, is buy-in. And when them folks actually have some say-so into, hey, we're going to establish procedure going forward, and we want you, the expert, to help us decide what that looks like. Then you get buy-in out of them. And then those are the same folks that use the system and the same folks that teach it to the newer generations. And that's how you do it. That's been my secret for success, and it works, I promise you.
Okay, gentlemen, our next question. When it comes to embracing and managing the changing workforce, where's the first and best place to start?
I think the first and best place is to make sure that your organization understands the scope and the potential negative impact if you don't act in time. Organizations are probably already feeling it, and they may not correctly be linking the problems that are with this changing and aging workforce. You've got to recognize that this is a factor and recognize that there is opportunity, but you're going to have to invest. I look at this, as I said earlier in the webinar, there's not a single organization that is exempt from what is happening in this changing workforce. All your suppliers, all your vendors, all of your competitors are impacted by this. And what do we want to do against competition? We want to have a leg up. And a way to have a leg up is to embrace that this change is coming and see the opportunity, and that will make you a stronger organization. So you have to have this sort of mental buy-in to this overall process. Your organization has to. And then from there, it turns into a tactical project. How do you go about it? And we've outlined several of those skills in our webinar today. I don't know, Wayne, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would just kind of add that understanding starts at the top. I often find when I go into an organization that at the top, they don't even fully understand what automation can do for them, or what enterprise asset management or CMMS and resource management, even ERP solutions. That folks at the top often don't understand what the digital world can bring to industry fully. So that understanding has to start there, because then you make your plan for the organization going forward and how your folks are going to be brought into it.
Well said.
Okay, the questions keep coming. My next question for you folks are, how can I encourage my team to leave a legacy they're proud of?
Well, I think if you can capture, I mean, every organization has a Chuck and has a Susan, but their legacy will live on if you capture what they do. People will remember Chuck long after Chuck's probably gone, because you've got this great documentation of how Chuck did it back in the day, and he could do it faster and better than most people. But eventually, by seeing Chuck's experience, which will live on inside the CMMS, I mean, that's putting your legacy in there as it grows. So I think that maybe is a simple example of how you might be able to do that.
You know, when you form a team, pride comes with it naturally, is what I would add. And that's really, you know, I don't like the word shift. Shift sounds like a place where you're at. To me, a team is a thing you're doing. And so when third shift is a team, and it's third team, and now they're proud of who they work with and what they do, and then you'll even get competition within the teams, and ownership and morale starts to build. Yeah, that's how you do it. That's the best way I can explain it in words, anyhow.
Okay, thank you. Our next question. What is the best way to leverage knowledge from employees who are retiring sooner rather than later?
That's kind of the same. That's the same response. Again, we have to capture what they know, get them. You know, they are in a great position that they are. They're able to share their experience of, especially these longer tenured people that have worked there, and they might be starting to get nostalgic about the fact that they've been there a long time and their legacy lives there, and get them to embrace that mentorship role of the dirty hand side of the job. You know, one thing that I think is never the right thing to say is, I'm too busy to show you how to do this, kid. If that environment's happening, then that's a communication problem. That's a soft skill problem. That's lack of vision into what really needs to happen, and correct that. And once you do and say, hey, we need to capture what you've learned because this is part of the future, how we're going to do things, get them to see it that way. And I think they'll be willing, and the value will be there.
Yeah, you know, I would just add that when I do an implementation, for every major area of the implementation, I find the Chucks and the Susans, and they actually sit on the implementation team, and their input goes into what I build. Then again, they have ownership in it, but also I have the smart stuff in there too, from the people who know that business process and all the idiosyncrasies of it. So, the only other things I would add is audio and visual. Use digital communication forms like audio-visual recordings and things like that to get everything you can squeeze out of Chuck and Susan into a forever repeatable CMMS.
Well said. I couldn't agree more on that one.
Okay, our next question is, I've wanted a CMMS system for years, but my boss can't get past the costs. It's too expensive, he says. What advice do you have?
I'll take this first, and I'm sure Wayne's got a good one on this, but it's not a question of cost. You've got to change the terminology from cost to value. What is it going to save me? How is it going to make me more efficient? How is it going to improve our bottom line? When you look at the return on investment on a CMMS, just do the math on, hey, if it can prevent your critical assets from going down, like say you go from an 87% uptime to a 93% uptime, a CMMS can do this for you. The numbers that work out there, the dollars you save will dwarf the cost of implementing CMMS. So it's not a question of what it will cost me. It's how is it going to help me? What's it going to save me? How is it going to make me more profitable? And Do Solutions, we can help you with that conversation. But you really got to shift. You got to shift the narrative. Wayne, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, to anybody who's on the fence about whether to spend the money on CMMS or not, I can promise if you just look at organization within your organization, or in fact disorganization within your organization, I can promise anybody that doesn't have a CMMS has disorganization, because that's really a CMMS brings organization into one place, into one central place where everything lies, where you have beautiful historical information and organization to your resources and your materials, for everything from decreasing loss or theft or waste to increasing reliability. If you don't have a CMMS, ask yourself how often is your equipment breaking down and surprising you? Because the thing that goes hand in hand with the CMMS is a good maintenance program, a preventative maintenance program. I'm on a soapbox, but it's important.
I agree with you 100%, Wayne, 100%.
Okay, I am afraid that we have run out of time. With that, I would like to thank our speakers, Wayne Glass and Paula Chance, and our sponsor, of course, Dude Solutions. And as a reminder, if you are registered as a group, please add the names and the emails of everyone that was in attendance on the exit survey. And with that, on behalf of Industry Week, have a great and productive remainder of your day.